Hello humans, it's just Martine, and welcome to a secret TBR where my twin sister picks what books I read. For today's challenge, I asked my sister to pick 3 books. If you want to see another video with me and my twin together, check it out here. I didn't actually capture any footage of her picking, so I'll just tell her what she picked. She picked 3 specific choices for 3 very specific reasons. The first pick that she made was a bind up of the first 3 Annalyn the Canadian Spy books, and this is a really young juvenile fiction type middle grade series about Annalyn, this little girl who becomes a Canadian spy. So this was the first 3 books in that, and she chose it because a large part of my family is Canadian. Go Canada. And she's like, ooh, Canadian. So she picked it. Then she picked Neanderthal Seeks Human, specifically because she thought it was hilarious that it's the first book in the Knitting in the City series, so it involves knitting in some way. That's why she chose it. And then finally, she picked Jesus, a Revolutionary Biography, because she wanted to know like what it said. She was interested in hearing my review of it. So I'm reading it for her. Let's get into it. Wow, incredible, great. She finished her first book for this challenge. The first one I read was technically 3 books in one, but they were really short kids books, so I'm counting it as 1 book. It's totally fine. And that is the first 3 books in a bind up of the Annalyn the Canadian Spy series. And I ended up giving this 3 stars. I have a couple thoughts about it. It is very out there and like childish. It's written for children, and that really shows. Like, if you're looking for a young person's read that's about something like deep or meaningful, this isn't that book for you. But I went in hoping for some raucous Canadian fun, and that's what I got. It really played up the Canadian part of Canadian Spy, talking about things ranging from like hockey to donuts, and it had some really quirky, funny lines, just regular things that, like, if you read them in a book that wasn't trying to be this style, you'd be like, this is a terrible sentence or something. But reading it in the context of a book like this, when it says something like, he had great hair and a great smile, because all Canadians had great hair and a great smile, it's just like a charming, winsome type of book, in my opinion. The first of these stories was about a missing box of tissues. The different spy missions are not necessarily what make this series charming. The second one was about the destruction of like all donuts, and the third one was about people who brainwashed all Canadians into thinking they hated hockey. I think the first one was my least favorite, but it definitely set up for the rest of the series. I think I enjoyed the last 2 like pretty equally. I will say, in the future, if I have like nieces or nephews, to infuse in them their Canadian heritage, I will be providing these books. I think they're fun. I think they're silly. I think kids would absolutely love them. They were really quirky. I found them to be really charming. But those are all the thoughts that I really have about this. Like, you have to go in with the mindset of like, this is a children's book, and I have that frame of mind. I have that curiosity and wonder and hilarity of like a small child. Going in with those things, you're going to enjoy it thoroughly. If you go in looking for like prize literature, then like, look elsewhere. I don't know what's wrong with you. Why are you coming to this? Like, what? That's what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? Thanks, Michaela, for the weird and wonderful pick. Moving on. I'm a quarter of the way into the book about Jesus, and so far it's really good. It's interesting. There's like so much history that happened around that area and around that time. Like, there was just so much happening, and so it's very rich and it's very detailed, and it looks like a short book, but the pages are really tall, and then it's just jam-packed with information and stuff, so it's pretty overwhelming at times, but I'm learning a lot. I just finished this book, and I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. What I have to say for this is that it was incredibly interesting, and it made me think about a lot of things, which is good. That was the purpose of the book. There are going to be some interpretations I don't agree with. I haven't even decided which interpretations those are that I don't agree with. This was obviously really well researched and done. There are some times in which the academic nature of it makes it hard to know what the writer is actually saying. Sometimes where he says like, this, and this, here's the evidence, and that means this, except that means this part made no sense. It's hard to give an example, but like, he was just using a lot of complex terminology. Like, if you're using not complex terminology and then it's suddenly there, you're like, yeah, I'm following what you're saying, and then the conclusion is something that you don't know what he's saying. Like, it's just very weird. I don't know. But I did learn a lot. I enjoy thinking and hearing about society during the time period when the historical Jesus would have been alive, because I think it matters a lot for interpretations of the Bible. And some of my favorite sermons have gone like, here's what we usually have this thing mean, but like, here's what it meant for society at the time that it was written, which I think is always interesting because, of course, when it comes to works of any kind, you're looking at it through an entirely different lens than the time and place and context in which it was created. And especially for something like the Bible, where it spans thousands of years and is written by dozens of different people and in different timelines, it's easy to forget that each piece of that is made in a different context and with a different purpose in mind. Especially when it comes to the Gospels, it's really interesting to read about because in Christianity, you know, Jesus is like the important figure, and yet what do we know about him? What was he actually saying, or what did his disciples actually take from what he was saying? So this had some really interesting viewpoints, but it also wasn't like the most eye-opening thing ever that like changed my entire worldview or anything, which I don't think, well, it was kind of trying to do. The point is, it was really well done, but there were some confusing bits that were needlessly confusing. Also, it was confusing wherein the author would be like, I disagree with this thing that people say because it's based entirely on like conjecture or like not enough evidence, which I understand. But then he'll be like, here's all the evidence. So then my interpretation of this evidence, instead of it being like evidence, it's interpretation of the evidence. And I'm like, so yours are conjectures too, right? Like that's the point about a historical figure, especially from a time and place that got rewritten, changed so many times. Like, we're just not gonna know. We weren't there. And it was kind of frustrating for him to be like, all these other people are definitely wrong because they're their interpretations. Also, here's my interpretation. You know what I mean? Anyway, but it was a solid read and I'm glad I read it. But I'm also glad it's done. I would be lying if I said that I originally thought I had a great vlog clip for this, and then the other day I was sorting through my footage and I don't seem to have any thoughts about Neanderthal seeks human anywhere. Very confusing to me because I definitely read it and I could have sworn I reviewed it. I guess I didn't. So now I'm going to. Neanderthal seeks human, I gave 3 stars. There were a couple things that stood out to me here. The main male character was so aggressive and like dominant in a terrible way. Before the girl acknowledged what she wanted him to treat her like, he already treated her a certain way, as in like without asking her if he could, he would order her food. Like the first time they ever ate together, they weren't even dating at the time. He ordered her food and she was like, what? And she's also a very independent character, which makes it especially confusing. I didn't like the main male character, Quinn, his personality at all. Although I do have to say that because of the time it takes to get to know him, at first he doesn't seem so bad. In fact, in some ways he almost gets worse over time throughout the course of this book, but he's nowhere near as bad as he is in the 1.5 Neanderthal marries human that I also ended up reading this year. He's way better in this first one than that, but still not my favorite type of main male protagonist at all. This is the beginning of the like Knitting in the City series, although I do have to say, disappointing that she started off the series with the one person in the group who does not know how to knit. Weird choice, but okay. Every group has got one of them, I suppose. And the main female character was incredibly interesting and quite funny. She has like a lot of trivia and facts in her brain, and especially when she gets anxious, they all come out. Just the way that she interacts with people is like pretty funny. The things she says sometimes are like, it's just her trying to cope with the situation she's in, but it's really quite funny. And I do like that that was one of the things that Quinn liked about her, because from the beginning, you knew he really liked how she looked, but you also knew that he really appreciated who she was as a person and things she said and thought, which helped a bit. That being said, there's a plot twist in this that was in no way secret from the audience. Not in the like, it was well plotted so you could figure it out, but in the like, it was dead obvious and you thought the whole time that the character was extremely stupid for not catching on to it. Because Quinn, slight spoiler, but not really, because you figure this out within really early in the book. The character takes forever to figure it out. My sister has now been reading this book and she agrees completely on my analysis of this. Quinn is the owner of this security company, but because sometimes he stands in and does jobs with them where the main female character first meets him is as a security guard at her original place of employment. Then she goes to work for his company because he like hands her, she gets fired and he hands her his card and says like, I'll get you a job. And she doesn't realize he's the person that owns the company. He hands her the card. In my brain, I go, oh, he owns the company. And then she spends the next over 100 pages not realizing that he owns the company, even though he starts showing up more and more. People are calling him like Mr. Sullivan and treating him with really great respect and getting really nervous about him and around him in the workplace. And she's like, that's weird. And that's because he's in charge. And like, he's in charge of her training. And she's like, that's weird because I'm an accountant and he's a security guy. I don't know why he'd be training me. And I'm like, girl, he owns the company. Anyway, so that just frustrated me a lot. But overall, it was like an okay read. These were all in a very even playing field. From lowest to highest, Annalyn the Canadian Spy and Neanderthal Seeks Human both received 3 stars. And then Jesus, a Revolutionary Biography got 3.5 stars. So they were really all kind of nice middle of the road reads for me. Sturdy, as it were, reliable. Definitely an interesting and eclectic group. Like if I showed you these 3 books and asked you like, what do you think this secret TBR was? I'm not sure you would be able to guess it. Very much thank you to my sister for helping me pick out my 3 books for this challenge and giving me such an interesting array to read from. It was a very fun time. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below which of these books seems the most interesting to you. You know that this is My Twin Chooses My TBR. If you did not know that this was My Twin Chooses My TBR based on these 3 books, what secret TBR do you think that it would be? I really want to know. Think of something creative. Make me laugh. I don't know. And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!